Okay, so we're moving into the next area, if you will. And by the way, I'm going to try to mention this several times. Everybody knows I've said it's opinion only. Uh, very boring conversation. In fact, one thing I didn't mention was you got the fast forward button. So fast forward through, you start to hear for a minute or two, say, I haven't heard enough, or you want to pick up certain parts, use the fast forward button. You don't have to sit here and listen to me, uh, talk about all this stuff. Because, like I said, it's pretty boring stuff, but it is, from my standpoint, very important from the standpoint of as far as educating our and working with our valued clients, policyholders. Okay, so here's a starting point. The Japanese once said the Shoshin mindset, or start with the beginning in mind. Okay, here's the deal. You're going to have, if you're going to address EPLI, employment practices, you're going to have what? Maybe four choices. Uh, you can buy insurance, and you got three alternatives for the insurance. You can try to create your own program. Uh, you know, your policies and procedures, and your employment manual, and if you're in at a certain level, you've got risk management people, or you bring them in. Admittedly, when you're dealing with, you know, I'm a certified risk manager, and I was in the founding class of the certified risk manager certification way back when. But any risk manager that's worth his salt is going to be six figures or more, male, female, whatever they are. And then there's agents. It depends on the agent, but agents that, like myself, not so much that we've been doing it for so long, because I could have 40 years of 1 year experience as being an agent. And of course, I am, you know, if live long enough to 2029, then I'll have, 50 years in the business. So, and as I've said earlier, when I got out of the military, I just needed a job. And to this day, in my brain, I'm still, claims. And I do understand. I'm not a lawyer, but I think along those lines as I do with tax, even though I'm not a business CPA. Okay, so and then what's the other thing? Well, do nothing at all. Okay, um, I really think the do nothing at all strategy doesn't make any sense to me. Now, in risk management, since just touching on the subject, the number one technique, in my opinion, of successful risk management is avoiding the risk in the first place. Wake up, the world. Um, if I have two roads to go down, and one road has a snake on the road, I actually am okay with snakes. I don't hang out with them, but some people are like, oh, snakes, I'm scared. I'm like, okay, whatever. Uh, then the other road goes the same place, same amount of time, and there's no snake on the road. So then, you know, I guess comedians make fun of these people. It's like, oh, go down the road with the snake. I'm not afraid of snake. Oh, I got the stick or whatever. I'm like, why are you going down that road? Okay. Okay, maybe you're right. The snake isn't going to do whatever to you, or you can handle it because you got a stick or something. I don't know. But I do see, and this is life in general. It's not just insurance, but it seems like some people just head down the road of the snake and just say whatever. It's like, okay, that said works for you. So, however, here's the challenge: as a business owner, you've chosen, you opened a business, and once you open that business, you're going down that road with the snake, okay? And the snake is the risk of what could uh, do something to you, or well, basically, I explain to people insurance. I always talk about three levels of knowledge: know nothing, know everything, dumb it down. Insurance is really simple in this regard. First off, when people talk about insurance, a lot of times they talk as some kind of transference mechanism. It really is not. Maybe work comp, we might make the case on that, statutory benefits under coverage A of the work comp policy. But it really, it's a financing mechanism, and it's not going to cover everything, and it's not going to provide you enough coverage for certain things. So you buy insurance for, in my estimation, other than you're required to have it, like a lien holder or your franchisor or somebody tells you got to have insurance, which, believe it or not, is in your best interest anyway. But they have to be told. But you really have, it's insurance real simple. You have either something that is so catastrophic that you don't have the resources to handle it. Okay. So you buy the insurance for that, let's say. You also may buy it, even though you may have the resources, but you have the insurance because it would inconvenience you financially or disrupt maybe your thoughts or feeling. Give me an example. I have a client. Um, uh, they've been with us on some business stuff and personal. Um, they have a $250,000 loss on a $2 million house. I think these people could write a check for $250,000. Um, and I don't believe they have a lien holder because lien holder requires you to have insurance. I have a reverse mortgage. I know all about reverse mortgages, by the way, if you're in that age group and happen to be an advocate in certain situations. I have it as a line of credit. I have $1,000 that I have there. I just keep it in case I need, a couple 100,000 or whatever for something. And the bottom line is the company's knocking at the door, talking about the bank, saying they're going to put single interest insurance on me because they didn't get the certain thing from from the insurance company. And I'm like, they have $1,000 exposure and they're going to put single interest insurance on me. Okay. But my point on this, getting back to this, again, apologies for the tangential discussion, uh, that's the base of the insurance. So when we get back into the employment practices, here's where we are. We think that you should do everything in your power within reason, financially and otherwise. I'm not asking anybody to reinvent the wheel or asking them, but I'm saying, like, if you have certain things that you can do, then, and you don't do them, the question is, why, it's like, I'm not a fan of Dr. Phil. I don't like the guy, but at the end of the day, he says, "What were you thinking?" And I have a lot of that when I see things. And the people I talk with, they're in the minority, quite honestly, that over the years that I've talked to, that maybe appreciate or, um, you know, um, you know, realize that we make a living. Yes, we're commission people, and we're no different from any other salesperson out here. There's plenty of them on every street corner in the insurance field. But at the end of the day, we're trying to, make it give some kind of meaning or value back for these people that are paying tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. Okay, because I don't know about you, I'm not a fan of paying for insurance, okay? And I can have my days with, insurance companies. I happen to have a high opinion of people that work in the industry and that I think overall we do a good job in that regard. But I do have times when certain things in organizations don't sit right with me. And if you haven't figured out by now, I'm not the shy, quiet type. So if I have a situation involving one of my clients or in I'm my own client, um, I generally am not going to keep quiet by it. And now, if it's something that they if we owe it, I'm old school. If we owe it, my friends, I'm certain ink should be drying on the check. On the other hand, if it's beyond the scope of whatever, then okay, fine. Okay, so getting back to these choices, this fork in the road. Okay, do nothing, uh, have spend a lot of money, as much money as you think appropriate, to make sure that you have programs in place and everything else to do that. That's all good. I don't like to do nothing, and I like the idea that somebody is aware of what's going on and they're trying to, address it. Um, and it's a case that usually the bigger the company, maybe the more attention they're going to pay to that because maybe they have the resources. But the people that we work with, by and large, uh, they could be working 68 hours a week and they're tied up with trying to make, especially in this environment, pay the bills, pay the payroll, elevated payrolls, pay for the higher costs of food, deal with the headaches of a business, even if you're successful. Okay, so, but then we go into another one. This is one I really am not involved with per se, but I do know it. It's a management liability program. And what that program is, and they have them for certain types of business, especially smaller businesses, and they'll combine coverages. They'll combine, um, employment practices. They'll combine fiduciary liability. They'll combine directors and officers, D&O type of things. And on those, you have to be careful because, in my opinion, they're combining potentially maybe frequency with severity, but they also, depending on line of coverage and, type of business. Um, my other thing that they do that is if you're buying that kind of policy, you should make sure that they have like separate limit coverages, if you will. Okay. Because at the end of the day, um, you've got to make sure that you have adequate coverage. If you're dealing on a franchise side, and there may be franchises out here, big mistake on their point that the franchisor does not have their own coverages pertaining to management liability, more specifically from where we're looking from, is employment practices, where they could either have somebody in their organization that has this type of claim, or something can be a derivative of the activities of a franchisee. And there's been back and forth on the tax or the case law and the Department of Labor relative to that. I'm not going to get into that because it's much more advanced and maybe not germane to this entire conversation. Okay, so I said that one I'm kind of iffy about. The next one you see, which some coverage is better than no coverage. But everybody hears I do the analogy of the cigarette lighter. Well, it's not the cigarette lighter either. There is a benefit. Okay. So I don't like, okay, and I tend to shy away from employment practices that is embedded into your property casualty program, such as the business owner's policy. Now, if that's the only choice you've got, in other words, you can't get an affordable standalone policy from a company like, say, Philadelphia, Houston General. There's a few other ones. Uh, trying to think of starts with B. Anyway, uh, not Berkeley. It's Beasley. So Beasley's one of the other, players. And in fact, some of the carriers, I believe Farmers is one of them. For a period of time, they might have um, Beasley. they're fronting the putting the policy out as far as uh, hey, we're applying employment practices, and it may be not only the Beasleys created the uh, you know form or whatever, but they may be behind the scenes actually providing that coverage. I mean, as far as taking in the premium and then, of course, handling or paying out the claims. Okay. So, and I'm going to talk about this, that one versus the next one. Okay. So you've got these endorsements or add-ons onto these um, policies, BOP policies. And I'm a big fan of BOPs, but I always said they're fairly idiot-proof, but they're not totally. And you got some things you need to look at on those. I got a separate video on that. All right. So the last one, of course, is the standalone EPLI policy. Now, here's where I'm just going to pick on Philadelphia because I prefer their program, and there's no perfect program out here. But to start off with, when you're dealing with these management professional liability, I've professional liability in general, if I'm writing a doctor, a dentist, or whatever, even insurance agents, whatever, it's all what we call claims made or claims made important and reported, which basically means they are not occurrence form. And they can be very, dangerous because they are not like, if I had a, 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 a hail claim 2 years ago on my house and was insured with State Farm, and even I'm with Farmers now, I don't go to Farmers on the claim that happened 2 years ago. I go to State Farm. That's called an occurrence. Um, I'm not going to really talk about that. And if I haven't mentioned it, there's a 26-minute video. I'll try to mention it, re-mention it in these different things that Sean Smith, who is with Amwins, and he's a vice president, professional liability underwriter, and he has this YouTube video. It's about 20 something minutes long, and it's only like 12 likes, and it's actually put through another agency. And if you're a layperson and you don't want to listen to me, or you say, hey, yeah, you can listen to those 5, 7 minute deals from fellow insurance salespeople. I'm sure a lot of them don't even have destinations, but regardless, something's better than nothing. And they give you something and they say, hey, call me, whatever. This is not so much, you can call me, I'm interested in call me, but these are not call me videos. These are information type things. So I would recommend, if you're listening to this and it'll pop up, that somebody take the time uh, to listen to his video. This applies to the people that I'm conversing with as people that want to associate with a pros pro and people with expertise, and so that's a recommendation. Okay. And then one other thing, this little side note for the people that are in the business that may be listening to this. I'm a big fan, as you know, of the three sources. This is for the people who work with us, or that they're interested in our knowledge and the organization. Um, the leading expert, in my opinion, in well, management liability, but more specific to me, is employment practices, and his name is Frederick Fisher. I think he's out of San Francisco. ELM, his name is organization, whatever. Um, his 1 hour video that is available for the Insurance Journal Academy, and I'm a member of them. Patrick Waite is the director, and prior to him was Chris Boggs. 100% recommend that if you're in the business and you have access to the Insurance Journal Academy, you listen to his 1 hour deal. It's really, my opinion, is really good because obviously he's at a level that's well beyond my pay grade. Um, so that's there. Uh, the most advanced one is the battery reports. That is actually through Army, and I bypassed. I'm a huge fan, as you know. At very least, anybody in the business should be getting, if they're doing property casualty, should be getting their CISR insurance, certified insurance service representative. You have the time or interest in doing a CISR, then, as far as I'm concerned, and maybe I'm a bit of a snob, but personally, I care less about designations, even though I got a bunch of them. The CISR is something that when we have somebody that works with us, we're strongly urging and will pay so that they can get their CISR. So if you were taking a bit of advice where you're in the business, get your CISR, okay? I'm an advocate of the certified insurance counselor. I was in the founding class of the certified risk managers. So three of my designations are related to the National Alliance, and I've known Dr. Holt and all the other people, the founder and everybody else, and there were great programs there, and a lot of really good people, mid-market guys, gals that you may interact with. We don't have much interaction with them after COVID. And the other thing I like is I can do stuff like I'm doing right now, or I can listen to it online. Okay, so we have the thing. Now, let's just finish this part off with a quick comparison between the two that you're that the small to medium sized business owner is going to have the most interaction with. One of them is, like I said earlier, contained in the box. Now, here's here's my challenge, and I read these forms. They vary by company, although the ISO BOP, if you will, of which Guard, who we do a lot of work with, Warren Buffett's company, Berkshire Hathaway Guard, um, they have this EPLI endorsement, the off the rack deal from ISO, and it's strictly first party coverage. And I don't like defense within limits. You're going to hear me really harp on this, and the reason why is because they're going to give you, okay, maybe you're just some little nobody restaurant on the street or whatever, and they give you $50,000 worth of first party coverage, and you say, oh, okay, well, thanks, you just throw it in, just like they do with cyber. We'll talk about cyber another time. But what really gets me unsettled is, okay, the limits, number one. You have to be careful about reporting requirements. You have to be careful about what they cover or don't cover, because these things are very challenging and they shouldn't be. Um, my opinion is, if you have any interest in employment practices exposure, I'm sort of prejudicial about this. You need to be with a really good agent that knows their stuff, okay? Because at the end of the day, I wouldn't be fooling around, particularly in the restaurant space, with not having 100%, you know, clear understanding about the coverages and the nuances. And what I tell people is, I read and reread all the policies. Okay. I don't sell anything that I haven't read. Okay. And I think most agents aren't in my category. Okay. It's a general observation, me an ex-claims guy. All right. So here's where I start having some things. Defense within limits. It also goes onto your loss run. And I'm like, uh, I I've had accounts that have been non-renewed because they had a employment practices claim, and it happened we didn't pay out anything for the negligence, but we had to defend the deal, because if you don't defend yourself at the end of the day and they get a judgment, pardon my language, you're screwed. So, you have to do it, okay? And half of all defense costs relative to general liability or excuse me, half of all cost premium or money taken out of the premium is for defense costs. Okay, and I guarantee you that number is much, much higher when it comes to employment practices because it seems like my limits will get eaten up. And then I got a $50,000 claim, and then the insurance company wants to non-renew or cancel you. So to me, I don't, I believe in segregation. I'm very old school about segregation, asset segregation, whatever. In this case, this should be in its own separate, bucket, if you will. All right. So that's item number one. The second thing is, I'm maybe saying something out of school, but um, I'm going to use. I used to be with farmers a long time ago and did a lot of commercial. I came back and recently resigned and whatever. Neither here nor there. Always had a good relationship with farmers claims people and whatever. But the situation with the farmers deal is when you get they hand you over some nice add-on, EPLI. Well, the default EPLI, and you have to investigate this. You have a farmer's agent, or you're a farmer's agent. That the standard one does not include third-party coverage. And we already, in my other video, or part of it that we've broken up, already told you this is serious in an office setting, okay? But if it's, serious in an office setting, it's explosive in a restaurant setting, third party. So uh, the farmers, I think their preferred one, which I don't think is any difference in premium, ironically, that one will offer third party coverage because if the endorsement, the ISO endorsement, Insurance Service Organization endorsement, or some proprietary thing that these other carriers are writing, if it's silent on third party and doesn't talk about it, that would be concerning to me. Okay. So be safe than sorry. Okay. So it's defense inside limits. I don't like that. I don't like that that's going to come on to the property casualty, main property casualty loss runs, and that the carrier is going to turn around and non-renew you. Okay. And then you're going to be out maybe with an open claim, which is the worst thing you could possibly happen. And while the company may be still taking care, you're like toxic. Insurance companies do not want anybody that has open claims, okay? And so whether it's liability or property, or in this case, employment practices. So then that really stirs the pot. So it makes, in my opinion, based on what I know, it makes absolutely no sense whatsoever to have employment practices coverage. But like I said earlier, something's better than nothing. So at least if you have the coverage. The other thing it doesn't cover too is it doesn't cover wage and hour. Now, the carriers that provide wage and hour, picking on Philadelphia again, it's going to be a defense only, and it's usually like $100,000, and it's a sublimit coverage. Philadelphia has um, they're very good. My opinion of Philadelphia is very positive. Generally speaking, if they're in certain areas, and they can be a bit of a contrarian because they're writing preferred market, they're not excess and surplus lines. But I've read their form and I like it. For one of the things, it has uh, uh, well, you can get defense outside limits. You got the wage and hour sublimit. You're separating out those losses. So worst case scenario is Philadelphia does something, and then you got to go out and do something, but it's not going to take down your other stuff, okay? Because it's separate company, and it's away from your BOP and everything else you've got with ABC Insurance Company. So I really, really like that. And uh, now, on the positive side of the EPLI, if it's a endorsement, if you will, is something that is largely ignored. And very important, in my opinion, for people to use. I'm not going to go down the California road just yet. That's a whole nother animal, and I'll talk about the EOC and the states and how different things are handled. Okay, so when I look at that, I say, okay, give me something over there on the ones that you're like, hey, I really don't think it's a good idea, but you know, some coverage is better than no coverage. And one of the things that they do have in common, which I really like, is they'll provide risk management services free of charge related to employment practices. So they'll help and assist you with, your templates. Farmers may have a different name for it now. They used to call it the farmer's key. And I used to tell people over and over when I had maybe no choice but to put them in, um, the EPLI with farmers, even though I wasn't comfortable with it, for the reasons I outlined before. Again, not a knock against farmers, very good. I like the claims people, and I think it's really good on the service side. EPLI is a different animal because other people are involved. Okay, so what are we looking at there? Well, the thing that they do, this is what I say positive across the board, in my opinion, with all these carriers, is they'll provide these, risk management services, and it'll help with giving you a human resource template. It will, work with you. It's like a vendor, but it's like a law firm or something, and that they have specialization there. And where that comes into play is not only your documents and everything else, but they'll help you out with, some basic training for your supervisory personnel and even the employees and everything. So if I was if you don't have a six-figure risk management, human resource specialist, whatever you want to call them, I'm not a fan of the human resource department. I think they go through a lot of, hey, let me rule this thing or this and that. Um, but be that as it may, for the small businesses, generally the human resource department is you talking to the prospective employees. So not a knock against HR. I'm just saying uh, our people, they're probably bereft of risk management. Six-figure risk management people are well compensated human resource specialists. So you can go there. Now, let me give you over the years, and I've been doing this for 40 years, but in the restaurant side of things and businesses in general, car dealers, you name whatever, I've written them over the years. But here's where it gets sort of interesting. In the last, let's say, 10 or 15 years, when some of the carriers, or excuse me, some of the franchisees particularly got concerned about the expanding uh, web or universe of employment practices, whether it's the franchisor potentially being attacked vicariously or with their own thing, or the franchisees themselves. But here's where this really comes into play. And I think I've told this story before, but um, what I've had calls from time to time, which I totally encourage them because unlike my competitors out here, whether they're with their farmers agents or whatever, whoever the what they're, I don't. It's neither here nor there. State Farm farmers, whatever. You don't see State Farm in this anyway, or Allstate. But what happens is I will get calls from time to time about certain things. And one of the things I had two different things that have occurred that I can say as a general. But I'm gonna give you an example of one. One of the legacy founding, very nice lady. Always look forward to seeing her when I went to the Wingstop conventions. and so nice to Sandra and myself when my wife was alive, and first wife, and then of course me, and just so nice to me. But anyway, she called me up one time. She said, "Listen, I got a situation here, and I don't know what to do about it." And I said, "Okay." I said, "What do you?" Her first name is Carol, and I said, "Well, Carol, what is it that we need to uh, talk about?" She said, "Well, I got this employee." I'm thinking to myself, "Okay, we're already in. I got this employee." I go, "Okay, here we go." And she says, "Here's what my situation is. Uh, we interviewed her for the job. We told her we need somebody up front to run the cash register, answer the phone, blah blah blah." I said, "Okay, sounds good." And she said, "Here's what my situation is." She said, "The woman gets over here. She's running the register, okay, but she said my challenge is relative to the phone." And I said, "Well, what's going on with the phone?" Thinking, well, is she being rude on the phone, or she don't know how to take a message or whatever? She says she has trouble hearing. And I said, "Well, you trouble hearing?" He says, "Yeah." Says the people are calling in, and she can't like hear them. And I say, like, "Okay, well, it's not something wrong with the phone, I guess. Like you have a phone go bad or something." And she says, you know, uh, this it's something related to her hearing. Like she's really hard of hearing. She wasn't deaf, but apparently she had trouble hearing. And so she said, "And I don't know what to do about it." She said, "I can't have the her being, um, answering the phone, and she can't hear." And I said, "Okay, well, let me tell you just some just general observation. First off, we have a thing, ADA, and anybody that's read the act, which I have, and in the ADA, it says that you have to make what they call reasonable accommodations for people that have, some kind of disability. And disabilities run the gap. Things that you wouldn't think of as a disability, they might, you know, I mean, they got like a laundry list of disabilities. Okay, so I'm not going to go down the road. So, well, but here's where the challenge came about. I said you have to make reasonable. You're under the law, the ADA. You have to make reasonable accommodations. I said, but here's the thing: if you cannot perform the job, okay, because of this disability, well then the only thing you can do is see if there's something else that you could do, like working deep fat frying or something of that nature. I said, but before you even go down that road, and she kind of indicated like she didn't think she was capable of doing that. I don't know, maybe she couldn't even hear the order. I don't know. But at the end of the day, I said, here's what you need to do. On the farmers, EPLI was with farmers, may still be. I think she's with farmers. I don't know because when I left farmers in the end of May, that I have no access and I'm flying blind. And so I couldn't tell you, you know. But be that as it may, I said, you need there's a thing called the farmer's key. Are you familiar with it? No. Okay, well, here's what it is. It's a great service. All the carriers have it. Philadelphia has it, Farmers has it, anybody selling EPLI. And people really never use it, and they should be using it proactively like Stephen Covey says in the seven habits of effective people, being proactive. But be it as may, will be reactive. Here's what you need to do. They have a hotline, and you call the hotline, okay? I guess they call it a hotline, whatever they call it. And you talk to them and you tell them what's going on and everything else, and they will give you some instruction or information because from what you're telling me, she can't do the job. And the question of a reasonable accommodation. Okay, so um, that would be kind of a example of where the whether it's farmers and their endorsement or the standalone, that those are really really good things to have in your hip pocket, because no offense to the agents out here, and I've come across all of them, and mid-market, even mid-market guys, that deal with the $500,000 accounts on up, um, they're very good and they let them have certifications and things, but they may not have a certain level of knowledge. So you go to the specialist anyway. And so in this particular case, I could refer over, but if I was the restaurant owner, my opinion is say, look, I just want you to know, hey, you do really good work here. I like you do run the register. You're nice to the people. But I said, here's the deal. My challenge is most of our things are coming in over the phone, and we had to have somebody can answer the phone in here. And I just because we're a small, thing, we just don't have that. Now, is that the solution to maybe let her go, or potentially maybe you can find another area for it, but in a small business, very challenging. And but rather than me make that call, I sent her off to talk with the folks. The other one I have, and you'll get this once in a while over there. Most common cause of loss, firing away on a restaurant, is slip and fall. Okay, all right. But here's what you also will run into. There's people that get a little testy relative to they're in a bad mood, or they come in and whatever. And what I've explained to when I've talked to people from time to time, owners, but it usually comes in after the fact. Unfortunately, they're calling me up after the loss, or not loss, but after the incident. Um, some of these people can get pretty aggressive that come in, and they can not be the nicest or best people relative to your employees. And what I did tell them, I said, you also need to train the employees. This works both ways. So you can't be brusque or hateful or whatever. And there has been instances in these restaurants where there's been an escalation, and so one of the things that if you have anybody in a supervisory position, they 100% need to be aware and trained. And the old saying, plan for the worst and hope for the best. So once again, to summarize the biggest things, I don't like defense costs inside limits. I want them outside the limits. I don't like them embedded into the restaurant BOP policy, and I told you why. Open claim, non-renewals, a lot of, not good things. And if you're going out in the field and you have some kind of open claim, I've been in doing this for a Stone's age, and I'm telling you right now, these insurance carriers, um, it's almost like you got some kind of communicable disease or something. So I don't, uh, I don't want to cross. I don't want that. I'm going to segregate that snake. Okay, and uh, and then on the positive side, I do think these programs are good, and you should investigate them and hopefully use them. It may not eliminate the claim, but at least you're trying to make a within reason. And a lot of this stuff, if it's a lot of it's free, or it takes an hour or two for the training or something for the supervisor, just have them do it. What's 2 hours out of somebody's life, you know? Say, hey, when you're gone over the weekend, get online, do this, or whatever. I'll pay you for the extra 2 hours, whatever. So, I mean, you got to protect yourself, you know, and it's your employees. They're employees. I have I'm not a big fan of employees. Okay, not that anything's ever happened on my side of things as far as bad, or I'm going to sue you or anything like that. But they can be your best friends and their worst enemies. The you can't have the egg without, well, you can't have the egg without the chicken. Then the chicken is, of course, the people that come in to buy your product, but connected into that are the employees. And you can't be, my opinion, you can't be a person unto yourself, an island unto yourself. So I think we all would agree that employees are, you know, so important to your business, especially when you're in a business like restaurant, and they are in close quarters. They work really hard. Um, People in the credit the insurance or the restaurant industry, they're not people can be working 60 hours work weeks, so they're hardworking people. But it can be challenging, and it really only takes one disgruntled one to cause you problem. Okay, so I will talk separately about what happens if what they can do and what you can do if there is a situation that's involving a claim. That'll be another part of the discussion. But my take on this is that yes, you want the best coverage at the least cost, but I I need to have third party coverage. Okay. I want to have and I know I can get, say from somebody like Philadelphia, a separate wage and hour limit. I do not I think I said I do not want the claim and everything to be inside of my property casualty deal. You know, I already said I'm probably beating a dead horse on this. I don't want the defense within limits. I want the defense outside of limits. Um, I do. I mean, there's some other things on the coverage side. I, I won't necessarily get into them, but there's clauses called the consent to settle. I can explain to you about, also known as hammer clause. They can be softened consent to settle or whatever. But what I'm going to look at is, I mean, the biggies for me is defense outside limits. I would like to have a separate wage and hour deal because wage and hour is the two growth areas in the employment practices world are retaliation claims, okay, and wage and hour. So I really want to have those sort of coverage. I'm not going to be able, I don't, there may be out here, get wage and hour that I'm going to pay if I didn't pay them sufficiently according to whatever is adjudicated. But um, I want to at least have, I like that idea that I can maybe have $100,000 defense cost if there's a wage and hour claim filed. I do like whether it's that one and or the endorsed one. I do like the fact that they offer the risk management helper assistance hotline, evaluation of your helping you with your manuals and things of that nature. So, it's a law firm, and instead of having to spend $300 or $600 an hour, it's a service that the insurance companies pay for. Hey, anytime you can get the use of a lawyer for free that is in a particular area, uh, definitely look at that. Okay. So those are kind of the items that I really say on the coverage side, what we think you should be looking at.